My 19-year-old son wants to marry his girlfriend, but I fear he's rushing into a lifetime mistake. He's barely an adult, but my son is ready to take a huge step with his girlfriend, someone whose family wants them apart. I'm caught between fear and helplessness, trying to protect him from heartbreak. I never imagined I'd be writing this. Watching my own son, my little boy, ready to step into adulthood with such reckless abandon, it's terrifying. He's only 19, barely out of high school, and already he's talking about marriage like it's the simplest thing in the world. But I know better. I've lived long enough to see how fast love can turn into pain when you don't have a solid foundation. And right now, I'm terrified that my son is about to make a mistake that could change his life forever. It all started about a year ago when he met her. Sarah, an attractive, charming girl who quickly captured his heart. Their relationship moved fast. At first, I thought it was just a harmless teenage crush, but the more I observed, the more uneasy I felt. It wasn't just their age difference from true adulthood or how little time they'd been together, it was the warning signs I couldn't ignore. My son Jake is still a kid in many ways. 19 years old, no stable job, and certainly no financial independence. Sarah, on the other hand, comes from a family that is fiercely controlling, especially when it comes to her future. Her parents are the type who believe that a woman's sole purpose is to study hard, build a career, and stay away from distractions like relationships. They didn't approve of Jake at all. In fact, about 9 months ago, her parents forcibly separated them. They confiscated her phone, cut off communication, and demanded she focus on her career. It was brutal. I overheard part of a conversation between Sarah and her mother once. Sarah was pleading for some semblance of freedom, something I hadn't realized was so deeply suffocating. I just want to be treated like an adult, she told them. Maybe if I get married, they'll see me differently. Hearing that hit me hard, but even then I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about freedom, it was a way out. And somehow, Jake had taken that as a green light to propose marriage. When Jake started telling me about seeing signs everywhere, numbers like 222, appearing on clocks, license plates, receipts, I realized he was desperate. Desperate to believe this was fate, destiny, something that would rescue Sarah from her controlling parents and let them be together. But to me, it felt more like a fantasy spun out of youthful hope and confusion. I don't like Sarah, and I'm ashamed to admit it. I've tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, but I can't ignore the facts. She's always asking Jake for money sometimes, even for things he can't afford. When her birthday came around, she convinced Jake to throw her a party using the money he had saved for himself. He bought her expensive takeout instead of treating himself. It didn't sit right with me. I worried she was taking advantage of his kindness and inexperience. And then there's the mystery that weighs on me the most, the reason Sarah's parents don't trust her. I've asked her mother a few times, subtly probing, but she never gives me a straight answer. Just vague hints about things Sarah did or mistakes she made. Meanwhile, Sarah has a younger sister who isn't held to the same harsh standards. Why is Sarah so different? What did she do to lose that trust? I can't help but suspect there's more to the story, something I haven't been told. Something that explains why her parents are so adamant about keeping them apart. I'm torn. I want to believe my son can see through it, that he's mature enough to make his own decisions. But deep down, I fear he's blinded by love and hope, unable to see the cracks that I can't stop noticing. I want to protect him, guide him to think long-term. But how do you stop a 19-year-old when his heart is set on something so final? Every night, I lie awake wondering what I can say or do to make him see the truth before it's too late. Because once you marry, there's no turning back. The days after Jake started talking seriously about marriage, our house felt like it was slowly suffocating under the weight of unspoken tension. Every conversation became a battlefield between my fears and his stubborn hope. I tried to reason with him, to get him to see the reality of the situation, but it felt like talking to a wall. "Mom, you don't understand," Jake said one evening, his voice low but intense. "This isn't just some teenage fling. Sarah and I, we're meant to be together. I see signs everywhere. It's like the universe is telling me this is the right path." I looked at him, this boy who still struggled to balance his schoolwork and part-time jobs, who still called me when he had problems he didn't want to face alone. And here he was convinced that destiny had chosen him to save someone else's daughter from a life she didn't want. It was beautiful in a way, but naive, dangerously so. "She's your girlfriend, Jake, but marriage is forever," I said carefully. "You don't even have your own place yet. You don't have money saved or a steady job. Marriage isn't a magic solution to fix problems with her family. He shook his head, frustration flashing in his eyes. You don't get it. Sarah's parents are so strict they won't even let her talk to me. The only way they'll accept her as an adult is if we get married. I'm doing this for her, to give her freedom. I wanted to scream. The idea that marriage would be a ticket out of her controlling parents' grasp seemed more like a fairy tale Jake had convinced himself of. But Sarah's story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and painful. One night, I caught a glimpse of the kind of pressure Sarah was under. Jake's phone lit up with a message from her, desperate and hushed. I can't do this anymore. My parents are watching every move. They took my phone again last night. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending. Jake read it aloud to me with a heavy heart. She feels trapped, Mom. She wants out, and she thinks I'm the only way. I stared at him, a storm of emotions crashing inside me. Love for my son, anger at the situation, and an overwhelming sadness. I wanted to believe Sarah was genuinely caught in a tough place, but I also worried she might be manipulating Jake's good nature. There were nights when I saw Jake scrolling through his phone looking for signs, numbers like 222 or 111, flashing on clocks or receipts. He'd call me over to see them eyes wide with conviction. To him, those numbers were more than coincidences. They were messages from the universe confirming their fate. I feared his trust in these signs was blinding him to reality. I tried to remind him gently. Sometimes people see what they want to see, Jake. Signs can be coincidence. But it felt useless. More troubling were the stories Jake told about Sarah's demands. She asked him for money constantly, sometimes small amounts, sometimes larger ones he didn't have. Last month, she convinced him to spend nearly all his birthday money on a party for her. Jake looked so happy telling me about it, how special he made her feel. But all I could think was how irresponsible it was, how much it hurt him. I think she's using me, Mom, he whispered one night, voice cracking. But I love her, and she says she loves me too. That confession broke my heart. I told him, love isn't supposed to hurt you, Jake. You have to be careful who you give your heart and your money to. Real love builds you up, it doesn't drain you. Jake just nodded, eyes brimming with tears, but filled with a stubborn hope. He wanted to believe in their love so badly, even if everything around him screamed otherwise. I reached out to Sarah's mother a few times, trying to understand the root of her distrust. But every conversation ended the same way, vague excuses sidestepping the real reasons. Sarah's mother was polite but distant. It was like she was protecting a secret she didn't want to share. Meanwhile, Sarah's younger sister lived a different life. Less scrutiny, more freedom. Why was Sarah the only one under such tight control? What had she done to lose her parents' trust so completely? These unanswered questions haunted me every day. I feared my son was caught in a storm he didn't fully understand, and I was powerless to pull him out. The deeper Jake fell into this whirlwind, the more I felt myself drifting further away from him. Our conversations became strained, layered with frustration and worry I could no longer mask. Every time he spoke about Sarah, it was with an almost desperate tenderness, like she was the fragile piece that held his world together, and if anything went wrong, everything would collapse. One afternoon, I came home early from work and found Jake sitting at the kitchen table staring blankly at his laptop. There was an unopened envelope next to him. I recognized it immediately, a letter from the University Financial Aid Office. He had been approved for a small loan, but the amount barely covered tuition, let alone rent or living expenses. Jake, how are you planning to pay for the wedding? I asked gently. He looked up, eyes heavy with exhaustion. I don't know yet. Sarah says we can figure it out together. We'll find a way. I wanted to believe in their optimism, but all I could see was a mountain of debt waiting to bury them both. It wasn't just about money, it was the bigger picture. Was Jake ready for the emotional toll, the sacrifices, the heartbreak? And then there was Sarah. Jake had begun to share things he hadn't before, little moments that had gnawed at him. Like the time she called him in tears because her parents had grounded her after they found a text from Jake on her phone. Or how she kept apologizing for not being able to spend time with him, blaming her parents for everything. Mom, she's so different when she's with me. Jake said one night, voice cracking with emotion. She smiles, she laughs. But at home, it's like she's someone else. I could see the conflict tearing him apart. The girl he loved versus the girl trapped in a cage of parental control. Then came the late night calls. Sarah would call Jake in hushed tones, begging him not to tell anyone what was happening at home. She sounded scared and maybe even desperate. Once Jake let me overhear a fragment of a conversation. I can't keep living like this. If we don't get married soon, I don't know what I'll do, Sarah whispered, voice trembling. That sent chills down my spine. Jake was convinced their marriage would be the key, a doorway to freedom and happiness. But I kept asking myself, was it really love, or just a desperate escape from a suffocating life? I tried to warn Jake, carefully threading my doubts into our talks. Relationships are complicated, Jake. But rushing into marriage because it feels like the only way out isn't the answer, I said one evening, watching the frustration ripple across his face. You need to be sure it's what you both truly want, not just a reaction to pressure. He shook his head. You don't understand her. You don't know what it's like to be trapped. I sighed, feeling powerless. I wanted to protect my son from making a mistake that could haunt him for years. But how do you save someone who refuses to be saved? And Sarah. I started noticing subtle things in Jake's stories, the inconsistency, the guilt, the hints that maybe she wasn't as innocent as she seemed. One afternoon, Jake told me about a fight they'd had over money. Sarah wanted him to buy her an expensive gift for her birthday, even though he barely had enough for his own bills. When he said no, she accused him of not loving her. I clenched my fists. Was she really in love, or was she using him as a lifeline? My mind wandered back to Sarah's mother's vague evasions. What secrets were hidden behind that polite facade? Was Sarah's rebelliousness justified, or was there a darker side to her story? Jake's belief in signs and fate only made things worse. He kept telling me about seeing 222 on clocks on license plates, even on grocery receipts. To him, it was a confirmation from the universe that their love was meant to be. I wanted to scream, "Wake up!" But instead, I held back, trying to find the right moment to break through his rose-colored glasses. I realized the clock was ticking, and with every day that passed, Jake was moving closer to a decision that might shatter his future. The tension between Jake and me had become almost unbearable. Every conversation about Sarah spiraled into arguments or silence, and I could see that the weight of it all was pressing down on him. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong beneath the surface of their relationship. One night, Jake came home later than usual. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands trembled slightly as he fumbled with his keys. "Where have you been?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He avoided my gaze. "I was with Sarah. We had to talk." "Talk about what?" He sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "Her parents found out she's been sneaking out to see me. They're furious. They took her phone again and threatened to send her away for good." I felt my heart tighten. This was worse than I imagined. "She's scared, Mom. She doesn't know what to do. She's thinking about running away, maybe even moving in with me." The idea hit me like a punch to the gut. Jake was still so young, so unprepared. And Sarah, I couldn't shake the growing suspicion that she might be manipulating the situation to get what she wanted. But then Jake said something that shattered me. "Mom, I think she loves me. I really do." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in their love. But every warning bell in my head was screaming otherwise. The next few days were a blur of whispered phone calls, secret messages, and stolen moments. Jake's grades slipped, his mood darkened, and the excitement that had once filled his eyes gave way to exhaustion and anxiety. One afternoon, I found an unopened text message on his phone from Sarah. It wasn't what I expected. "Can you get me some money? I'm running low and need to pay for the rent." My stomach churned. It was the first concrete proof that Sarah's parents' mistrust might be justified. Was she truly in love, or was she using Jake's youth and kindness for her own gain? I confronted Jake gently. "Do you think she's honest with you? Do you think this is love or something else?" He looked away, the pain clear in his eyes. "I don't know, Mom. I just want to help her." And that was the problem. His heart was open, but his judgment was clouded. Then came the conversation that changed everything. Sarah called me one evening. Her voice was trembling, fragile. "I'm sorry if I hurt Jake," she whispered. "I just want to be free. I don't want to lose him." I listened as she poured out her fears and frustrations, the pressure from her parents, the loneliness, the feeling of being trapped. For the first time, I saw her not as a threat, but as a scared young woman, desperate for love and acceptance. But that didn't erase the doubts. How much of this was real, and how much was a plea for escape? I knew the road ahead was uncertain, filled with heartbreak and tough choices. And all I wanted was to protect Jake, even if it meant stepping into a battle between a mother and her daughter, a son, and his first love. Because sometimes love isn't enough. The atmosphere in our home had shifted. It was thick with unspoken worries and fragile hopes that could shatter at any moment. Jake was caught between two worlds, his love for Sarah and the cold reality that seemed to close in on them every day. One evening, Jake sat me down, his expression serious, but determined. "Mom, I've made up my mind. I'm going to propose to Sarah." Those words hit me harder than I expected. Part of me wanted to scream and beg him to reconsider, but I stayed silent, searching for the right words to reach him without pushing him away. "Jake," I began carefully, "I know how much she means to you, but you're only 19. Marriage is a huge responsibility, emotionally, financially. Are you ready for that? Have you thought about what it really means?" He looked me straight in the eyes. "I have. I know it won't be easy, but I want to save her. I want us to be free together." His conviction was heart-wrenching. It was clear he believed marriage would be their salvation. But I also saw the cracks widening in their relationship, in his dreams and in his innocence. In the following days, the strain became unbearable. Sarah's calls were more frantic, and Jake's exhaustion grew. He was juggling schoolwork and this impossible love, but the pressure was taking its toll. One afternoon, I overheard an argument between them over the phone. Sarah's voice was sharp, accusing. "You don't understand, Jake. You don't know what it's like here. You don't know what I'm giving up." Jake tried to calm her, but the desperation in her voice was unmistakable. I wondered what secrets lay behind that frustration. What sacrifices was Sarah making, and was Jake prepared to bear that burden? Then came the breaking point. Jake confided in me that Sarah's parents had threatened to cut her off completely if she went through with the marriage. They warned it would ruin her future. His voice cracked with pain. "I don't know what to do, Mom. I love her, but I don't want to ruin her life." I held him close, feeling the weight of a love story tangled in heartbreak and tough choices. That night, I sat down with Jake and said the words I'd been holding back. Maybe love isn't enough to fix everything. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to let go. His tears fell silently, but I saw a flicker of understanding. It was the moment when the fairy tale faded and reality took its place. Because in love and life, some battles aren't won with passion, but with wisdom and courage to face the truth. The days after our conversation were heavy with silence and reflection. Jake was quieter, more withdrawn, as if the weight of the world had finally settled on his shoulders. For the first time, I saw the boy I raised beginning to confront the harsh realities of adulthood. One afternoon, Jake came to me with a letter in his hand, a letter from Sarah. She wrote about her fears, her love, and her dreams slipping through her fingers like sand. She admitted she wasn't ready for marriage, that the pressure had been too much. She apologized for putting Jake in the middle and asked him to think carefully about their future. Reading her words, I felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief that they might avoid a rushed marriage, sorrow for the pain both were feeling. Jake looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed but steady. "I've realized something, Mom. I love Sarah, but maybe what we need now is time to grow to heal and to truly understand ourselves." It was a moment of clarity that I had hoped for, but never dared to expect so soon. We talked for hours that night about dreams deferred, about patience, and about love that isn't desperate, but mature and kind. I told him, "There's no shame in waiting. You're young, and life will give you many chances to find happiness. Don't rush into something because you feel trapped or pressured." Jake nodded, a small smile breaking through his tired face. In the weeks that followed, Sarah's parents reached out to me. Our conversations were cautious but honest, and slowly trust began to build. Jake and Sarah decided to focus on their education and careers, promising to support each other without the weight of a wedding ring. It wasn't the ending any of us imagined, but sometimes the best stories don't have perfect endings, they have real ones. Watching Jake grow stronger, more thoughtful, I felt pride and hope. Because love isn't just about holding on sometimes, it's about knowing when to let go.